It's not about the election. It's not about the outcome. It's not about Trump won. It's not about Kamala lost. It's not about that because it's not about one fixed election. It's not about an election every 4 years. It's not about, okay, what are we going to do in 2028? It is about long termism. It's about the next 100 years, the next 250 years, the next 500 years. It's about the struggle over time. It's about liberation. It's not short term in terms of even our human lifespans. A lot of people would say, okay, there aren't very many things that are longer than your life. When your life is over, you'll be dead, right? So 75 to 80 years, most people would consider that's a long time for anything, right? That's a long time to be alive, or that's a long time, for a company to be around for. And it's like, no, it depends on the scope and the lens. If you're looking at it from the perspective of one human lifetime, then of course that's a long time. That is the average human lifespan. You have to zoom out and you have to look at the arc of humanity and the arc of the struggle and liberation and the systems that we're fighting against. That's not one election, right? Genocide is not just happening in Palestine right now. It's not just happening in North Gaza. It's not just happening in West Bank. It's not just happening in Beirut. It's not just happening in Lebanon. It's happening in Congo. It's happening in Sudan. It's happening in Eritrea. It's happening in Mali. It is happening in Yemen. It is happening all over the world right now in multiple different countries. Especially the genocides that are happening in Africa are not being publicized. They are not being reported by the mass media. Why? For resources, for gems, for minerals, for diamond, for gold, for cobalt that powers all of our electronic devices, our electronic vehicles, our iPhones, our TVs, et cetera, et cetera. It's happening for oil. It's happening for gas. Okay, and it's happening for money. And it's happening for expansionism, settler expansionism, colonization. It's happening for land acquisition. And that has been happening for thousands of years, right? The exploitation of the global South by the global North, by the Western powers, by the United States, by the UK, by Europe, and of course by Israel, right? They align themselves with local actors, though. So a lot of people with Sudan don't understand. It's like, well, who's the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces? Who is the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces? I don't get it. Is it a civil war? No, it is two armed forces in the country of Sudan. The RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, are backed financially by the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and by the United States. So the US and the UAE are supplying the RSF, again, the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan, with weapons and with money because they want to keep Sudan destabilized so that they can then exploit the country, continue to exploit the country for its resources. What resources? Gold. So you can look it up, but like 80% of the exports from the country of Sudan is gold. And you can look that up with the UAE and how the United States factors into it. But both armies, the RSF in Sudan, the Rapid Support Forces, and the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, are committing atrocities, war crimes, crimes against humanity, gang rapes, mass rapes, murders of children, of women, of men, of defenseless civilians, right? Torture, etc., etc. So there isn't a good side. So I also notice a lot of the times with like the narratives that do get publicized more in like Western mass media for public consumption, there's just this very sort of simplistic sometimes black and white. This is the good guy. This is the bad guy. And you don't have that with the genocide that's happening in Sudan. You'd actually have to like sit down for 5 fucking seconds and stop like scrolling and educate yourself. Try to understand. It's universal you. It's not an attack. I'm explaining how they exploit people's impatience for countries that they don't have knowledge of, that they don't have extensive information about, instead of sitting down and saying, okay, who's the RSF? Who is benefiting from this? Who benefits from these local actors? In Congo, what's that genocide about? It is about cobalt because it is mined in Congo by women, by children, by men that are not given protective gear. There are no labor laws in Congo. So Apple and Tesla and Samsung and all of these tech companies obviously then exploit Congolese people and their country's natural resource, as I said, to make batteries for all of our electronic devices, for our tablets, for our iPhones, for our TVs, for our electronic vehicles, right? But it's an extremely toxic mineral to mine if you look into it, right? And they're not giving the Congolese people that are mining 12 to 16 plus hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, any kind of protective gear. So they're dying, they're being exposed to this toxic mineral. And the local Congolese, there are local warlords that fight over control of these cobalt mines because it is so lucrative, right? Because you have all of these foreign companies, these international companies, right, that are paying out the ass for the cobalt. So that is explaining the genocide in Congo. You have to sit down. It's like what's going on in Mali. There are mass rapes happening on the border of Mali, right? What's happening in Eritrea. So, like, I can go on and on and on, but then it's like, it's not just about, oh no, Kamala lost. Oh no, Trump won. You know, and it's not about privilege. So some people are saying, okay, but Trump is making threats that are unprecedented, and he's saying that he's going to activate the National Guard against Black Lives Matter protesters, and he's going to deport undocumented immigrants that are here, and he's making violent threats, explicit threats, death threats. He's talking about implementing the Posse Comitatus Act that was passed in the 1800s. Okay, I'm 43. I have heard this again and again. So, like, even with George W. Bush, right? I heard, and this was like literally 20 years ago, almost to the day, all of the same arguments that if Bush wins, everything is over, right? We've already heard this with Trump, though, in 2016, that if Trump wins, it's over with, right? And it's like they say that every time so that people do not consider third-party candidates. They say that every time to scare you and to fearmonger you so that you don't think in terms of long-termism. You don't think in terms of the long arc in humanity of struggle for liberation against oppressors. And then you start to say, like, I'm sorry about what's happening in Palestine, but I'm going to vote for Kamala because she's black and I'm a black woman. Instead of saying to yourself, like, no, I'm not going to vote for genocide, right? It's not just about who is a viable candidate who can win, right? We're fighting to break apart systems of oppression. That's going to take hundreds of years. Like, look into the fall of Rome, right? Look into other empires. The United States is an imperialist, white supremacist, brutalistic, fascistic, patriarchal, hegemonic, okay, toxic as fuck, genocidal. Look up the war crimes. Obviously, we are funding the genocide in Palestine. We are giving Israel billions with a B of dollars a year, and we are shipping them weapons through Boeing, through Northrop Grumman, through Lockheed Martin, right? Through Raytheon, Maersk, Maersk. That is the company handles the logistics for shipping the weapons to Israel. I understand that. And we're giving Israel cover, right? We're refusing to even suggest, like, an arms embargo, to suggest fucking anything, like a ceasefire agreement, even if it was temporary, right? So I get that. So we're allowing Israel to commit these horrific atrocities with total and absolute impunity. America has also committed its own genocide, though, that we've gotten away with. We've killed millions in the Philippines. Look up what America's done in Haiti. Look up what we did in World War II, right? And it's like, because America was the victor, it's like nobody put America on trial after World War II. Like, look up the fire raids in Tokyo. Killed more people than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's like when you wake up today and you go, oh no, Kamala lost. Like, oh my gosh, Trump is back in office. Oh my gosh, Kamala, don't concede. Recount the vote. You're talking about a day. You're talking about 4 years. You're talking about not what the fuck liberation is about, which is a long-term struggle over hundreds of years. It's incremental. So we have to try to break apart these systems. And we have to try to go for, like, class consciousness, a consciousness of workers, of oppressed people, of minorities coming together. And those coalitions, building that, is going to take time. It's not going to be about one Trump or about one Kamala, right? We have to think hundreds and hundreds of years out. So I just don't want to hear anything else about this fucking election.